What's going on, everybody? We got a special edition of Cage My IQ here for you. I'm your host, Cage. I got with you uh, Jeff El Jefe Molina. He comes in 10 and 2 in his MMA career. He is 2 and 0 in the UFC. Plus, he has that Dana White Contender Series victory on his name as well. How's it going tonight, Jeff?
What's up, brother? Long time coming, man. It's good to be talking to you.
Yeah, we've been going back and forth for the past like a couple months trying to get you nailed down. I know Twitter is notorious for hiding messages, but we've got you here now and got this interview going. And so let's get started with it. How's your night going?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good. Touched down in Vegas a couple hours ago. Got into the Fighter Hotel on corner in David Onama this weekend. So just getting checked in, and man, I'm vaccinated, so I don't have to take a COVID test, which is nice. Usually, like it's COVID test after COVID test when you check into the Fighter Hotel. So that was cool.
Exactly. As you just said, you're going to be cornering David Onama for his fight against Benitez this week. What are your thoughts on David Onama? I know you're raving about him right before we got on.
Yeah. Off air, I was telling you how good this kid is, man. He's a stud. I call him a kid, but he's actually older than me. I think he's a couple years older than me, but he's
Yeah.
good, man. He's good. He's really good, actually. We were talking about just his fighting style earlier, his rage control, and his ability to forward pressure with that high shell. That's kind of Piotr esque. Like I can't think of many fighters that keep that high guard. Dustin Poirier is another one, but the reason you don't see that is because you got 4-ounce gloves on. So it's common in boxing, that high shell. But MMA, the margin of error is so much smaller. But David Onama pulls it off. And what people don't see is a small head movement behind that high shell. And I think it's underrated. And his ability to do that is what makes him great. And I think this Saturday he's going to put on a life-changing performance.
Now, has he been able to help you out with anything? I know that you're cornering him. Has he been able to show you anything that you've been able to add to your like daily regimen of training or to your fight plan for the future?
Yeah. Everyone does, man. Everyone in our gym brings something different to the table, right? It's called mixed martial arts. There's definitely an arts aspect to the sport, so
Yeah.
everyone has something to offer, and especially David, man. He's got a lot of cool tricks that he does, and yeah, we all just kind of feed off each other and help each other out in that sense.
Now, before I get started with asking you about growing up and everything, I have to ask you the big question is what was it with your Twitter post from last week about the whole Maximoff fight? I know you made the comment about, looks like I'm going to be broke now. Then, of course, Maximoff chimed right in, and then Nate Diaz chimed in right after him. What was that all about?
Yeah, man, I had a lot of money on Soriano. I had 3.5 units across 3 books. That was like my lock of the week. And this stuff
Yeah.
happens in MMA degeneracy. So I just kind of posted like, hey, man, I lost a lot of money on this guy. And I joked that I'm now homeless. And Maximoff saw that, and he said a lot of people felt the same way. And then his homie, Mr. 209, commented, was like, they can all eat a bag of dicks or something along those lines. I thought it was funny, man. Obviously, Nate Diaz was just backing his boy.
Yeah.
I'm sure he doesn't know who I am or even really meant that. I just thought it was funny, so I posted that, and I was like, "What do you think he meant by this?" I'm not sure if you've seen that video with this guy named Drewski. He's like an internet
Yeah.
personality, but he has a funny video of like, "What does that mean?" I knew exactly what he meant. I just thought it was funny,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah, it was cool. It's cool to know that Nate Diaz knows me. Like he knows some kid named Jeff Molina who's in the UFC.
At least
Lost money on his boy.
Yeah, at least he knows now that you're relevant enough
Let's go.
to respond back. So that's something good. I like when I was looking at that fight, I just thought that I had Puna Soriano first round. Anything after that, I was telling people to live bet Maximoff after that because I felt like Puna has been like a first round guy. And then with Maximoff's wrestling aspect, I felt like he could neutralize that after that. I didn't expect him to just kind of dominate with the wrestling like he did, but Puna definitely had his shot. So I know you were like chomping at the bit for him to get that, but it just didn't work out. But you know what? You're going to be able to make your money back in the future because, of course, you're employed by the UFC. So,
I killed it this past weekend too, man. I killed
yeah.
it, so I got my money back. I'm no longer homeless.
I did bad this week. I went like of course I didn't bet like I was going to, and to me this was like an underdog card, and of course thank God I didn't because had I bet I would have went 0-3, especially with the Bandera fight where I felt like he got robbed a little bit in that fight because of that round two. But thank God I didn't bet that.
Yeah, yeah. I had a Arlovsky. Actually, I played him straight, so I'm glad he got robbed.
I'm glad you bet that, and I'm glad I decided not to.
Stayed away from it. Yeah.
Yeah, I stayed away from it. This week might be a little bit different, but I'll talk to you about that off air. But I just want to get started with tell me a little bit about yourself, like growing up. I know you said you're from Jersey, then went to Kansas. Tell me a little bit about growing up in both areas, and then how you got introduced to MMA.
Yeah, yeah. Spent the first decade of my life in Jersey. I was born there. I love that place, man. I was actually just in the East Coast last week. I was in New York City.
Cool.
I love the East Coast, man. So that's definitely always gonna be home. But moved out to Kansas when I was like 11ish, and I started doing kung fu when I got here. My cousin, my older cousin, kind of like an uncle, would take my brother and I to do kung fu, and I got my black belt in that. I did that for about 4 or 5 years. And long story short, I watched a pay-per-view card at a buddy's house. His dad was watching the fights. And I said, "What is that? That looks fun. That looks cool." Like I was very intrigued. And they're like, "It's UFC." They kind of explained it to me. At that point, there was only like 2 fights left in the night. We watched those 2 fights. Fast forward a couple weeks, I got the UFC video game, and my buddy would come over every day. We'd play that, and I just like enjoyed playing that game with my buddy. And then I started Googling these guys, these characters that were characters to me. They weren't real people. And I started Googling these guys, and I went on this like YouTube rabbit hole where I spent like weeks, literal weeks in my basement, just watching Pride fights, WEC fights, old UFC fights. And I was hooked, man. At that point, I was hooked. Like a couple days later, I Googled MMA gym near me, and the rest is kind of history, man. I was hooked. Trained for 6 months. Had my first fight at 15, 16 years old, 15ish. I think I just turned 16, maybe. I still had a bracelet on my face. I was a kid, dude. And then after I won my first fight or had my first fight, then I was hooked. Then I was addicted, right? I was addicted to that feeling of I don't know what it is, man. It's hard to explain the feeling of winning a fight.
Yeah.
Or being in a sanctioned fight and then getting your hand raised at the end of it. Like 10 out of 10 would recommend to everybody, right? Just get into one amateur MMA fight just to know what that feels, man. Because what's crazy is 99% of the world will never know what that actually feels like. Like, it's a drug, That's why people stay in the sport longer than they should. It's because they chase that feeling, because it's the most addicting thing ever, man. If I could just like bottle it up in a jar and hold on to that, I would. But yeah, that's how I started in the sport, man. After my first fight, I knew I wanted to do this for the rest of my life.
Now, tell me about the transition from, or I should say, the culture shock from going to New Jersey all the way to Kansas, because that's completely different scenarios right there. You're going off the East Coast to the middle of the United States to like the cornfield land.
Yeah, man. So I live pretty close to Kansas City, so it's not super like rural. It's actually kind of suburban, and then obviously the city's right there, so it's not too bad. But there definitely was some culture shock, bro. Like, I remember coming out to the Midwest or coming to Kansas, and I thought people were like overly nice. I was like, why? It felt weird. It felt wrong. I'm like, why are they like? You walk into a gas station, they're like, hey, how you doing? And you don't really get that in the East Coast, Like, they don't really say anything. They just kind of side eye you. And people are like asking you how your day's been and stuff. And I was like, these guys are fucking nosy here, man. Like it was different, man. And then, there's different terminology, like where I'm from, like a Dr. Pepper, this is soda, right?
Yeah.
In Kansas, it's pop. I didn't know what that meant. So lollipops are called suckers. Little things like that. But definitely there was the Midwest friendliness. Like, that's a thing. Like, and it took me a while to get used to it. But now that I'm used to it, I was like I told you, I was in New York City last week. I'm like, everyone's a fucking asshole here, bro. Like,
Yeah,
so that Midwest hospitality is a thing, and it's just different parts of the country have different ways of acting. So yeah, it definitely was a culture shock though.
What led you to Glory MMA? Was that the first gym that you went to, or did you go to a gym and then kind of transition from there to Glory MMA?
Yeah, so in Kansas City, there was kind of two MMA gyms that were big. One was HD MMA, which later became
Yes.
affiliated with American Top Team. It turned into ATT HD, and then the
Yes.
other one was Glory. So I started with HD MMA. It was a shoebox gym out on State Line, which is like it's
Yeah.
called State Line because it's this in between states, right? It's Kansas and Missouri. The coaches were Jason High, UFC vet, World Series vet, PFL vet, Dream vet, just an OG, and LC Davis, who fought for the WEC and Bellator. Those were my first coaches, and I started with HD. When I had my first fight, James Krause was actually there, and
Okay.
I have a picture of him after my very first fight. He wasn't cornering me or anything. I just knew him as like a KC legend, one of the first people from Kansas City to make it to the UFC. And I have a cool picture of me and him. But long story short, I ended up cross training at Glory with Jason High. We'd go there once or twice a week, and he'd give me a ride. And then eventually, after my first pro fight, I made the full-time move to Glory. Or no, sorry, my third pro fight. It was my third pro fight where I made the full-time move.
He must be a busy guy over there, because I feel like every card he has at least one or two fighters there. And the funniest thing was a fighter poured out a couple months ago, and then he was like, "I'll fight him, and then I'll take the fight." And then of course UFC was like, "Nah, like you're a coach right now." It's like everybody forgets that he not long ago he was still a fighter, and now he that kind of transitioned over to like a head coach role. And then one of my very first interviews was Derek Minner, and then he was talking about James Krause, how he does things differently, how as a fighter he's the guy that does the tape study for you guys, and then he kind of goes in there and tells you what you need to do rather than you have to do it yourself. Is that something that you do, that you do at Glory, where you just have to focus on training and then you have the head coaches tell you what to do?
Yeah. James Krause is a gangster, man. Not only that, but he's a mastermind of this sport. He, in my opinion, he's one of the best coaches in the world, if not the best coach. And I know I'm a little biased, but yeah, he's a busy guy. And the fight you're referring to, where he almost stepped in on a day's notice, not even a day's notice, it was at weigh-ins, man. I was actually here in Vegas with Krause, and we're here for Tim Elliott's fight.
Yes.
And we were watching the weigh-ins, and then we look on Twitter, and it's like Krause looking to step in, and we're like, what the heck? I text him immediately. I just saw the guy 20 minutes ago, and now he's taking a fight. That just kind of shows. I mean, that's leading by example. Like, that's the definition of leading by example, right? Being able to take fights on short notice like that, staying in shape. He's constantly training. He does have a full-time coaching role, but the reason he doesn't fight is because he doesn't have time for it, man. Like you said, he's cornering someone every weekend. There was a 6 week straight last year where he was in Vegas every week cornering. So he's a busy guy. As far as like a coaching aspect, he's the man. Like he does do a lot of the game planning. The ins and outs of training camp. He tells you the schedule you need to be on. The one-on-ones you have with him. You're working fight specific things when you're in camp. So he's the man.
Yeah, he's definitely one of the top guys for me. Like I see him, of course, up and coming. You got Habib Nurmagomedov transitioned over from fighting to being a head trainer himself. Plus, he's doing Eagle FC. You got a bunch of, but he's definitely, for me, James Krause is number one right now, because of so many fighters that you see coming out of there. Wasn't he supposed to have not just Anama? Wasn't he supposed to have somebody else fight on this card too? Wasn't it Marquez?
Yeah, Julian was scheduled to fight this weekend.
Yeah, he was scheduled to fight against Dawkins, and then he had to back out. Was it an injury? Was it COVID?
Yeah, kind of not my place to say. I will say that he had COVID on pretty late into his camp. but yeah, he was forced to pull out.
Okay. Yeah, because I know that it was unfortunate. I look forward to him. Every time he fights, since he came back from that small hiatus, he has looked great. He's had those funny post-fight comments that he makes each time. Like I look forward to seeing him top each one that he does. I didn't think they was going to be able to top the Miley Cyrus one, but then he did the Kansas City Chiefs one right afterwards, and that was even better
Yeah.
with that one. Speaking of Kansas City, are you a sports fan at all? Do you follow any sports and have any favorite teams?
Not really. I do cheer for the Chiefs just because,
Okay.
Kansas City, go Chiefs.
Yeah.
But that's about it, man. It's mostly MMA and boxing that I follow like
Yeah.
passionately.
Now, tell me a little bit about when you got the call to be on the Contender Series. I know you were probably 8 or 9 pro fights deep, maybe a little bit less, because I know you did a little bit more extensive with the amateur fights. Tell me about getting the call for the Contender Series, and then how it was finding out you were going to be on the show.
Yeah. So I think I just won my 7th professional fight. I think I was 7-2. I fought on a Saturday and got the call on a Monday, so it happened pretty quick, or maybe it was a Tuesday.
Okay.
Whatever it was, it happened a couple days after, like that, getting that call.
Yeah.
And before that last regional fight, we knew the implications of it. I was fighting a tough guy. I think he was like 11-4, good record,
Yeah.
or decent record at least. Had fought some good guys, some UFC vets, and we knew he hadn't been finished in like 6 years or something. So we knew a dominant performance and resulting in a finish would lead to something good like this. So even
Yeah.
having those expectations, I didn't expect it, especially that quick, man. Like I didn't expect to fight a guy on Saturday, Tuesday, get a FaceTime call from my manager Joe Wooster,
Yeah.
who's part of Iridium, and then he was out to lunch with James. So they were at lunch, and yeah, it was a FaceTime call, and they're like, "Hey, man, Dana White Contender Series in at the start of July. I think that was the original date. The Contender Series was supposed to be July, and then COVID pushed it
Yeah.
back to August. And yeah, I was hyped, man. I felt like a kid in a candy store. I remember like getting on my couch and actually like giving a couple little jumps, and I was
Yeah.
hyped, dude. Like, um, yeah, I was super excited, man. Like fighting or just having the opportunity to potentially get into the UFC with like having Dana White there
Yeah.
firsthand, eyeballs on you. Just I knew I couldn't pass that up. And it's exactly what I wanted. So yeah, it was pretty cool.
Now I see here that like you had that fight with Kenny Porter. You got the triangle choke round too. You actually had 2 rear naked choke victories right before that against Wilson and then Rhodes, on the Fighting Alliance, and then LFA. And then you had the FAC fight with Porter. That must have made it even more sweeter that you had 3 straight submission victories to like showcase it a little bit more that you kind of deserved it. I felt like, and then before that you had the finish, the strike and finish in the fight before that. So technically, before the Contender Series, you had 4 straight wins inside the distance. So you were already showcasing it before that fight, and then that Porter fight just kind of was like the cherry on top for you to like be like, hey, if I didn't deserve it then, I definitely deserve it now. That shot to at least fight somebody to get my contract.
Yeah, Dan. I kind of knew I was ready for the next level. Like I know what I'm capable of. My coaches know what I'm capable of, and at that time, they saw the potential and they knew the talent. Not to like brag on my own self, but I knew I was ready for the next level of competition. I wanted to fight the best in the world since I started in the sport. So
Yeah.
once I got that call, man, I was giddy.
Now you go into the Contender Series, you get that decision victory. How nervous were you to wait for Dana White to say if he had a contract or not?
Yeah. So even before, no. So after I got the call for Contender Series, I
Yes.
got the call at the end of February, start of March. So I had March, April, May, June, July, August until the fight. So I had a
Okay.
long time to prep for it. About a week after that getting the call for the opportunity on Contender Series, I talked to my manager, and I was like, I need to finish this guy right for a contract. Like that's how that
Yeah.
works. And he goes, man, your style is like so entertaining. With your style, like I think even if you get it, like go to a decision with this kid,
Yeah.
it'll result in a contract. So I kind of like nodded my head. I was like, oh, all right. I still need to finish this kid. That's what I got out of that. And then fast forward to the fight. Fight's over with. I don't have my coaches there. That they had to Kraus and Jason High both got
Okay.
COVID that week. So I competed without coaches there. So Kraus is the first person I talked to after the fight. He FaceTimed me, told me congrats. And the first thing I told him was, hey, did I do enough? Was that enough? And he's
Yeah.
like, yes. I'm like, dude, but I didn't get to finish. He's like, shut up. It was enough, man. He's
Yeah.
like, you had Dana White standing on his feet. You got a standing ovation. Like, it was enough, bud. I was like, okay, you sure? And he's like, yeah, man. It was a hell of a fight. I'm so proud of you, blah, yada, yada, yada. And then I sit down and the other fights have to go on. So the rest of the fight's finished. They put you in this room and you're just kind of sitting there and you're like, even at that point, I didn't want to get my expectations too high,
Yeah.
right? So I'm like, man, I really hope I got this. I really hope I did enough. But like, just the fact that I went to a decision didn't solidify anything. I was like, I don't know. So yeah, I was pretty pessimistic up to the point of getting the contract, right? Because I just didn't want to.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to get my hopes up. But then, I got the contract and I changed my life, man.
Now you go get the contract in August, of course. Then you get the call that your fight's going to be in April against Quilin Iori. How hyped were you to find out that the date of your first fight in the UFC?
Yeah, I was really hyped, man. It's so kind of like Contender Series after my regional fight, getting it shortly after. The same thing happened with the Contender Series. So I fought on Contender Series on a Tuesday, and I think I had my next fight lined up on a Thursday or Wednesday. Yeah, it was the day after, bro. Yeah, it was the day after. I remember Kraus hitting me up and like, hey, they're talking about Zaruk Adashev. I didn't know who that was. And they scheduled it for November 14th. I signed the contract that day, had my first UFC fight scheduled. About a couple weeks before that fight, Zaruk pulls out due to COVID. He gets COVID.
Yeah. I see it right here. Scheduled for January, and then
they reschedule it for January. Then I catch COVID, and then so that's like 6 months of training camp, man, where I'm getting ready for a fight, and then COVID keeps fucking things up. Then my actual debut gets scheduled for April 24th, I think. Yeah, I was stoked, man. I was ecstatic. I was like, it's finally happening, man. I kind of went into the slumps a little bit after those two canceled fights. Yeah. I was really riding that high of Contender Series for a bit, and I knew not fighting for 8 months people were gonna forget, and I wanted to keep that momentum going, and it sucked, man. I put a lot of time and energy and money into those camps, and for me not to get that payoff, it kind of sucked.
Yeah.
Then I get I signed the contract for April 24th.
Yeah.
Originally, it was supposed to be in Singapore. That's kind of a fun fact. That fight card, when it was first offered to me, was scheduled in Singapore.
Yes.
A couple weeks later, it gets scheduled at the Apex. A couple weeks later, it gets scheduled in Jacksonville. First fight in front of fans. So,
I was just going to say, it was the first fight in front of fans, and then that main card was just crazy where
just stacked.
I think every fight didn't go past the second round on that main card for that. Like, I remember doing like a watch along, and we were just like, damn, this. And we only did it for like the main card, and it was less than 2 hours. I think the whole main card was the early prelims, and then the prelims lasted longer than that main card. At times like 2. It just was quick. I'm just like, damn. I'm like, what a great way to usher in the fans back into the experience than to have all these finishes. And then I thought you were one of the stars of the prelim because you go in there against Aori. He's a pretty tough guy. I think he hit you early, but then overall you racked over 150 strikes in that fight. And I'm just like, geez, this guy, right before he gets into the UFC, he had that streak of submissions, and here he comes into the UFC, and here he goes like showcasing his boxing and his striking. It's like a complete 180, kind of what you saw from you on the regional scene, and that threw me for a loop. I'm just like, geez, I thought this guy was really good at grappling, but now here he goes showcasing how he can do with his striking. Was that something that you were looking forward to do? And then were you like proud of yourself for doing that well in your debut?
Yeah, Dan. Actually, I was known for my striking my whole
Yes.
career ever since I was
Yeah.
ever since I was like 15, 16. Like
Yeah.
when I was underage, I couldn't do MMA fights yet, so
Yeah.
I could only do kickboxing fights, right, up
Yeah.
until you're 18. So I had 10, 11 kickboxing slash Muay Thai fights, and then as an amateur, I didn't really grapple much, man. I did, of course, in the gym, but in my fights, it was mostly striking.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the stigma I had even up until this last fight, where it's like Jeff Molina is just a striker. You can't wrestle, you can't grapple. But man, I wrestled in high school, and I'm a purple belt under Jason High, and I've been
Yeah.
grappling for the last decade of my life. So I think that's kind of an underrated, undervalued part of my game. So as far as my debut, I thought I had a piss poor performance, man. I'll
Okay.
take it for what it was. I got 15 minutes of cage time at the highest level, which is
Yeah.
valuable. And I'm not going to cry over spoiled milk. I've done that enough about my fight. I'm glad
Yeah.
I got a bonus that changed my life. But the cool thing about this last fight was I got to show I'm not just a striker, man. I can grapple as well.
Exactly.
Larsheda threw up some good sub attempts, and I kind of shook him off with no problem, and kind of showed some slickness on the ground. And that was what I was most proud of for my last fight. Was like, hey, man, I'm not just a striker. I've been grappling this last decade of my life, and I felt like that was a little an underrated part of my game, and I'm glad I got to show it.
Now, how was it to get that first finish in the UFC? You got the round to finish to counter right their ground strikes. Like I'm telling you, going into that, a lot of people were 50-50 on the fight. I was on you like all day. Like I was on you. Like I do DraftKings a lot. I had you in my lineup. You were actually on that card. You were my first pick in that lineup. And a lot of people were like, why are you going with them? I'm like, this guy's striking. That's all I'm gonna say is all I need to see was that like little tidbit from that first fight against Aori, and that was enough for me. Just because of the volume that you were able to put out, and I felt like you could do that over a 3-round fight, and you just poured it on him. Like you did go back and forth a little bit, but I felt like you just had it, and I felt like right in that second round, you caught him good with that one shot, and then you just finished him off. But just how was it to get that first finish?
That felt awesome, man. That felt really fucking cool. Up until my Contender Series fight, all my wins had come by way of decision, and
Yeah.
it was something that kind of bothered me a little bit. Again, I'm not going to cry over spilled milk. I'll take the debut for what it was.
Yeah.
I learned a lot from that fight. It made me a way better fighter. My performance was trash, man, and I learned a lot from it. So, me getting to finish in my last go around was something I was happy about and I was proud of. It was like I finished every fight leading up to Contender Series in my debut, and I wanted to get back to my finishing ways. And I said that in every interview leading up to that fight. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm getting back to my finishing ways. Like, I'm not getting paid enough to go 15 minutes with these guys. Like, these tough fights will come when I'm fighting the top 5 people in the world, top 10 even. Like, those tough fights will come where they're a little back and forth and a little more competitive. But I shouldn't be having these type of bangers with, again, not to diss Aori, but with
Yeah.
nobody. Is like, he's not top 10. And I just know what I'm capable of, man. And
Yeah.
I said this before, but my coaches know what I'm capable of. And I feel like I've yet to piece it all together. But my last fight was a good showing, or like a small glimpse of what I can do. And I'm just excited for the next one.
And then another thing I caught after the fight was how emotional you got after the fight, after you got the finish. Tell me a little bit about that.
Man, there was a lot going into that last fight. There's always injuries going into fights. I
Yeah.
had some things pretty busted up. My dad's been battling cancer the last like year and a half, so had that going into the fight. There's always gonna be things, man. Everyone has a sob story. It just it was cool, man. It was one of those where in this game you have to adapt and overcome whatever that is,
Yeah.
man. Everyone's gonna have something. There's gonna be injuries in camps. There's gonna be unfortunate circumstances. There's gonna be
Yeah.
last minute opponent changes. There's gonna be botched weight cuts. This game is so crazy, man. And you throw a pandemic on top of that, and it gets
Yeah.
even crazier. So that's one thing I've learned from the sport, man. The sport has taught me a ton of life lessons, and that's one of them. Like just the
Yeah.
ability to adapt and overcome outside of a fight, inside of a fight, in training camp, whatever that may be. And that was one thing I was happy about with this fight, was the way I handled those situations, was just adapt and overcome, man. Like for Contender Series, I mentioned that my coaches got COVID that week. So, they came into Vegas, we flew in with them, and then boom, next thing we know, they have COVID, and it's just me and my teammate cutting weight
Yeah.
together, fighting with no coaches. That's part of the sport, man, is the ability to adapt and overcome. And I was a little emotional after this last fight. I'm not really an emotional guy, so that was kind of different for me. But it was just it was good to know that everything I put into that camp and really the last 10 years of my life paid off.
Well, I would just like to say, firstly and foremost, I'm sorry to hear about your dad and what he's going through. But hopefully he's doing better, or he's going to be able to recover from cancer. But other than that, moving on forward, of course, do you know about any fight coming up for you? Have you heard anything being scheduled in the works, or is it something that you're waiting to hear back on?
Yeah, I haven't heard anything yet. I did get an offer back this would have been a month and a half ago for March, that London card.
Yeah, okay.
Unfortunately, I had to turn it down. Just still dealing with a couple injuries, but I had a procedure done last month here in Vegas. So I'm healing up great. Timeline
Okay.
wise, I'm looking at May. And yeah, I told Mick that. I actually saw Mick at some fights in Houston a couple weeks ago. And I told him that too. I was in the bathroom, and next thing I hear is, "Hey Jeff, when are you gonna be helping you again?" And I turn around, and it's my boss. I'm like, "Oh, what's up, man?"
That's
So
great.
yeah, I got to talk to him a little bit and just kind of tell him where I'm at. And yeah, we're looking at May. As far as who I want to fight, no one really comes to mind, man. Like, everyone's kind of booked right now. The flyweight division isn't that steep. There's some names. There's some names like Ode Osborne
Okay.
would be a fun fight. Tyson Nam would be a great fight, man. That's a fight that excites me. He's got that one-shot knockout power at flyweight, which you don't see a lot. So that fight intrigues me. Like that would wake me up early every day.
Yeah.
Like just fighting Tyson Nam. He's a big name for the division too, so
Exactly.
I like that fight. Someone just fought a couple weeks ago, and I called Malcolm Gordon. I like that. I'm not sure. I think he's getting married in May. I called him out. I was
Yeah.
like, "Hey man, you free in May?" And then someone's like, "Nah, he's getting married." I'm like, "Oh, okay." Zaruk Adeshev. I've been scheduled to fight that dude twice, man.
Yeah.
2 times. So third time's a charm. I'd love to run that. Yeah, dude. I spent fucking 8 months of my life thinking about another man and not being able to fight him afterwards is kind of fruity. So I wanna fight that guy. But yeah, whoever they
Yeah.
give me, man, just let me know when and where, and I'll be there.
Yeah, you definitely deserve, like, to me, you definitely deserve that, like, 15 to 20 range fight where you've gotten 2 straight wins, so you deserve a fight to where you can win that, jump into that top 15, because I feel like with that flyweight division, they could use that fresh faces in that top 15, and you'll be one of them. And I just look at the potential matchups that you would present into that top 15, and I think it's limitless with you. But other than that, how has like training been since your last fight? You last fought, of course, in October. It is now February, so it's been like 3-4 months. What's the typical training week been like for you since then?
Yeah, it's been good, man. I train every day, twice a day, regardless if I have a fight lined up, except for Saturday or Sundays. I don't train Sundays,
Okay.
but sometimes I do. If I'm in camp, I'll get like a light workout. But yeah, training's been good, man. Like I mentioned earlier, I've been playing with a couple injuries before this last
Yeah.
fight, so I've been dealing with those. Just been doing what I can, but I'm still in the gym every day. I'm coaching a lot more since the injury, which is cool, man. It's a good way to keep me sharp, and you learn a lot from coaching, man. Like breaking down technique and being able to teach it really helps your technique, because
Yeah.
some of the stuff I do, I just do it like subconsciously, right? I don't really think about what I'm doing. I just kind of do it. So having that ability to teach it to different people that learn differently too, so you have to explain it in different ways, really helps you out as a fighter. And yeah, I enjoy coaching. I enjoy cornering. I'm cornering this weekend. Just selfishly, it makes me better as a fighter, and I
Yeah.
also get enjoyment from watching other people's successes or other
Yeah.
people's improvement in certain things, like their striking or their grappling, whatever, weight loss, whatever it may be. I get some enjoyment from that. So that's kind of how my training's been going. I'm still in the gym every day. I'm still doing what I can, and I'm getting back to like a full live go here soon. So hopefully this next week I'll be back doing all the live goes, and I'm still in the gym. I'm drilling and everything. I haven't been able to do the live situation. So now I should be able to spar and roll.
Yeah, well, hopefully we see you sometime in May or June at the soonest. Give you a couple of months to get a fight booked and then train with all the guys there at Glory. But what are some of the things that you like to do outside of the gym? Because I know all the fighters, like you're so ingrained into training, preparing, making weight, and everything. What are some of the things that you like to do outside of that, like just hobbies and whatnot?
Man, MMA is definitely the priority.
Yeah,
So even outside of the gym, I spend a lot of time focused on the sport. Like it's what I'm literally obsessed with the sport. I've been that
yeah,
way for the last decade. So a lot of times I'm watching film, sometimes for like my own education or my own enjoyment, and other times it's sport betting. So MMA betting is
yeah,
something me and you have talked about, but
yeah.
off air too. It's just something I enjoy, man. It's kind of been my passive income. I quit my job back in August, a couple months after the debut, and it's been my passive income. So it's been pretty good to me. I do spend I spend a couple hours a week researching fights. Looking up level of competition, who they fought, watching tape, and then yeah, I've learned a lot the last couple months, what to do and what not to do in betting, and I definitely do enjoy it. Um, what else do I do, man? Not much. I play Xbox with buddies. Uh, you know, every other night. Um, I like hanging out with my friends and family. Yeah, man. Not nothing too fancy
Do,
outside of the sport.
do you catch any TV or where you don't have any time for it?
Yeah, yeah. I'm especially in camp, man. When you're like
Yeah,
sometimes I'm too like tired to even like pull out my
yeah.
Xbox controller and play with my buddies. So yeah. I'll stream. I'm watching Euphoria right now. I'm on
Okay, cool.
Yellowstone. I'm on season 4 of Yellowstone. That's a banger. Yeah. I'll stream some shows for sure.
I gotta get on the. That's what everybody in my MMA community keep telling me. They're like Yellowstone, and
Dude,
I might have to start that once I'm done. I'm getting ready to finish Peacemaker tomorrow. No, Thursday. Thursday's the
I haven't seen that.
finale. I recommend watching it. It's so funny. Like you see John Cena, and you add in humor with it and all like the humor with the superhero-ness to it, and it
Yeah.
makes for like it's my favorite show of the year so far. And then of course I'm
What
looking.
is that on?
It's on HBO Max.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
There's only like eight episodes for the season, I believe. So it's pretty short, but it's great. I love it. It's going to be a nice segue for me to when what you call it comes on Disney Plus next month. What is it called? Not Shade, but Moon Knight. When Moon Knight comes
Okay.
on, they just came out with that. I'm more of like like superhero
No, I'm
movie
into it.
show guy
Yeah,
right
yeah.
now,
Same.
and so I've been just going back and forth between DC and Marvel with that, and then
Yeah.
because a lot of my shows now are either done or haven't come back yet.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So
I
you're
have
kind
to,
of in between right now.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm in between that, so I'm filling my time with just like the movies.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
like
You said that
I'm
show is
get
called Peacemaker?
yes, Peacemaker with John Cena. It's a spinoff from was it spinoff from the Suicide Squad?
Okay, cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I'll check it out, man. I'm locked in this hotel for the next couple of days, so I got
So
nothing to do.
I'm telling you, when you watch the first episode, you're gonna laugh so hard, and you're gonna be hooked on it. So it's definitely really good.
Sold.
Yeah, yeah. But right before I let you go from this interview, I know you want to get time to watch some TV and relax. What's some of like like things that you have to say for amateurs that are looking to turn pro? What are some advice you would give them?
Yeah. To an amateur fighter, it would just be show up, man. It's just show up every day. It's just we got a saying that we use a lot at the gym. It's actually a book: chop wood, carry water,
Yeah,
and it's very real, man. I can't tell you how many times I've seen very talented fighters stop in the sport just from not showing up, right? Like
yeah,
they'll find an excuse. Like, I don't care how unathletic you are. I don't care how much you think you suck. If you show up every day and do something, and you show up twice a day at that, you're gonna get better, and eventually you're gonna get good, and eventually you're gonna become really good. it doesn't matter how athletic you are or how bad you think you are, man. If you keep showing up to something every single day, no matter what it is, you will get better at it. That's science, maybe, I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but like, that's how that works, man. And I can't tell you, like in jiu-jitsu, it's called blue belt syndrome, right?
Yeah.
A white belt comes to jiu-jitsu every day. They find something they're passionate about and they enjoy it. And then they get their blue belt. And then about a month after they get their blue belt, they stop showing up. And they find an excuse, man. I've seen every excuse in the book to why people stop showing up to the gym. Like, I got a new girlfriend, or I got married, or I got a new dog, like whatever, man. Like they'll find an excuse and they'll stop showing up. And, a lot of friends that I have stop going to the gym, but they're still friends. I don't see them every day like I used to because they don't show up to the gym, and that's where I'm at. But it's just that would be my one piece of advice, man. If you're truly passionate about the sport and you want to make it to the UFC and you want to be a world champ, and you just want to be successful in the sport, is show up every single day. And I know it sounds corny, but give your best effort while you're there, man. Like where your head's at when you're on the mats is important. It kind of shows your ability to learn. So going to practice every day with intention. I don't care how bad you think you are, you will become good, and you'll become better than good.
Yeah,
eventually.
And you got to be able to make sacrifices, like you said. You got to be able to sacrifice time with friends, family. You got to put the work in to 100%. make the goal happen. But every end of the episode that I do with my interviews, I give you the floor to just give a shout out or give a thanks to anybody that you want to shout out to. So if you want to give a shout out to anybody, here you go.
Shout out to my team, Glory MMA. My coaches, James Krause, Jason High, Austin Ford, and to you, Dan. Thanks for having me, man. I know it's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
And shout out to MMA Twitter as well, man.
Yeah. Well, I know everybody with Fighters First, that's the network I'm on, and then of course me with Cage IQ. Thank you so much for coming on, and we look forward to the next fight that you have scheduled. But once again, this was Jeff El Jefe Molina, 10-2 2-0 in the UFC. He is the newest star in the flyweight division. Look forward to your future, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your year. Thanks for coming on and having this chat with me.
Of course, brother. Thanks for having me.
And for everybody tuning in, thanks for tuning in. Hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and please hit the like button and hit us up in the comment section. Let me know what you think of this interview and give any thoughts that you have to Jeff Molina. And please follow him on Instagram and Twitter and show him some love. But that's it. I'm your host, Cage, and thanks for tuning in.